Good evening, Howard.
Evening.
Howard.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Evening. Good, and by you?
Excellent. Thank you for asking.
Howard, why does it feel like the 6-year-old has just been put in charge of the 4-year-old?
Ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome once again to Sunday Nights at the Base. It's most appropriate to mention our partners in the Chesed series until this point. To Sol, in particular, Robin Smukla and Kate Gershuni and their team, thank you for your partnership. We look forward to working together again with you really soon. Tonight we have a very special show planned and the start of a new chapter in the series, Change Makers, personalities, companies and organizations making a difference in a positive way. This evening we have two very special guests, Howard Feldman and Dr. Anton Meyberg. The truth is, from the get-go, it would be remiss not to mention your weekly Synthesis podcast, which so many of us benefit from, and a sincere thanks for that to each of you and to Synthesis. Howard Feldman, where does one begin? A business strategist, a keynote speaker, published author, public figure, media personalities on News 24 and contributes to multiple publications, both in South Africa and around the world. He is the host of the Morning Mayhem on Chai FM, where he engages on current affairs, finance, business, politics, and socio-political commentary, offering his listeners, as he calls it, no safe space. Truth is, over and above that, I like to call him my friend. Dr. Anton Meyberg, physician, pulmonologist, and within the current climate, certainly a household name, with a reputation as one of the leading experts on COVID and dealing with this pandemic. It is truly an honor to host both of you. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Robert Katz.
Thank you, Rabbi, and a warm welcome to our guests on the new series, namely Howard Feldman and Dr. Anton Meyberg. Dr. Anton, we'll come to you at the end of the show. Howard, we're going to start with you, but before we start with our participants, just a warm welcome as usual to our viewers. For those joining for the first time, a special warm welcome, and the chat show and questions are open. Very generously, Howard, who has written 3 books, namely Carry On Baggage, Tightrope, and Smile Damn It. I've read 2 of the 3, and I can highly recommend them. Howard has agreed very, very kindly to donate 3 sets to our viewers. But there are viewers who are going to have to comment or ask a question. Panelists will decide which of the 3 comments or questions will be the winners, and that's how we are going to decide on who gets the prize. So, Howard, good evening, Howard.
Evening.
Howard.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Evening. Good, and by you?
Excellent. Thank you for asking.
Howard, why does it feel like the 6-year-old has just been put in charge of the 4-year-old?
Look, this can go in any direction. I'm not used to sitting on this side of the interviewer's desk, so it should be quite interesting.
It should be. And in fact, I've been on your Chai FM show in your studio quite often, so it is going to be different. But a warm welcome, Howard, and thank you very much for agreeing to appear on our show. So, Howard, you're no stranger to the media. I can't improve on the rabbis, or not even improve. I can't add to the rabbi's introduction to yourself or Dr. Anton, so I'm not going to try to. So let's get straight into it. You're no stranger to the media. You have your own show on Chai FM. You have your weekly synthesis program with Dr. Anton. You have a weekly article in the Jewish Report You are periodically quoted more often than not in News 24. That's where I find your general general articles. And as well, you are actually the body language consultant or person to go to for RT, Russian TV, which is very, very interesting. And I want to actually spend a bit of time somewhere during this discussion with you on that, Howard. So today's show is really twofold, Howard, and we want to understand Howard Feldman behind Howard Feldman. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion who Howard Feldman is behind Howard Feldman, some of the more interesting stuff that you've experienced in your written media, in your radio show, some of the reactions, some of the positives, some of the less positive, some of the more interesting people you've interviewed, and your own personal growth and development coming out of that. And then perhaps, in the second half of the show, we'd like to just concentrate on positivity. You're one of the most positive people that we know, Howard. You radiate positivity. And I think in today's times, it's important to try and learn positivity. I think each and every one of us can learn and be more positive, et cetera, et cetera. So I do want to concentrate a little bit about that. Howard, just for those viewers that don't know Howard Feldman, there's not many on the show that don't, but for the couple that do, I can assume, just you've had a very, very interesting career. You were very successful in business. You ended your business career as a commodity broker. You had your own business and you took up a media role. What made you end your business career, take up a media role? And let's take the discussion from your media career onwards over there.
So I think that I've always loved media. I've always loved writing. I've always loved that space. And in fact, when I was at university, I did my couple of years at my undergrad degree. I loved literary theory. I loved English, and in fact was offered to go and study overseas in the field of literary theory. At that stage, I'd been accepted into my LLB, and I went to discuss it with my father, who's an engineer, who was an engineer, who had sort of managed to get his life together from complete abject poverty and zero privilege. And when I went to ask him what he thought of this idea of going to study literary theory overseas, I might as well have told him that I was a drug dealer, and no, worse, an unsuccessful drug dealer. That's how bad it was. He was just horrified. There was just nothing worse. So I shelved that, and I went to do my LLB. I became very interested in mining law. I went to work with my father-in-law in the mining company, loved the international trading side of the business. I learned the mining business there, and then eventually went on to establish a commodity trading company, which we ran for about 15 years. I think the change was always going to come for me. I had a series of events, criminal events, in very, very close succession. The business was going through a difficult time. Global commodity prices were very challenged. It wasn't an easy time, and all of this, I think, came at a time when I was ready to hear a message and ready to reevaluate what was important for me. And I took a break from that completely. I wrote my first book, Carry On Baggage, and then slowly got into that media space. It was a natural sort of move towards media marketing, consulting, and that was kind of the route that I naturally followed. It wasn't an easy route at the time. It was I would say about 2 or 3 difficult years, because you don't make a change like that very, very easily without a lot of introspection, without a lot of pain, which there was, without a very supportive family, wife and kids, particularly who were prepared to go on that journey, because it was not an easy journey at all. But I don't regret one day of that hardship in terms of what the fulfillment that I get from every single day of my life at the moment.
Right. Howard, it's fair to say that you've become the voice of the Jewish community, maybe not the official elected voice, but people do listen to you. Well, yes, Howard. Yes, people do listen to you. Yeah. You have a very, very strong media presence, and your opinion is read and considered. Okay, do you feel that, and as I said earlier, there's a lot of media in which you are on a weekly basis quoted and writing, and there's a lot of quite entertaining stuff, Howard, and I for one really enjoy your Jewish report stuff. It's almost as if you're writing articles with me in mind, kind of thing. But be that as it may, do you feel the weight of responsibility in your written and less so Chai FM, we're going to get to Chai FM separately, but certainly in your articles, when you write your articles, what is the intent on writing? Is the intent to stir debate and discussion, or is the intent to be humorous? I know that there is always a twist of humor in it, but what is the intent when you write? And the second question, Howard, is when you write, are you always in the same frame of mind? I.e., are there times when you're in a particularly jovial mood and that joviality comes through in your writing? There could be other times when you're more cantankerous, and would that impact your writing on a given week? Or as a journalist, and I mean the journalist in the fullest and widest sense of the word, do you have to take an impartial view and say, right, forget about my own personal circumstance or feeling or mood at this point in time, this is the message I need to get across?
It's a great question. So first of all, I'm not a journalist. I'm not trained as a journalist. I don't think I have the... And in fact, I love the fact that I don't have objectivity, because I don't think I do. I do have the ability sometimes to distance myself from what we are all going through. I think that is something that I have been able to achieve, but it's certainly not objectivity. The truth is that I question any journalist who claims to have perfect objectivity, because I don't believe it exists. I write my truth. And it might be that one day, as you said, on a Monday morning, I'm feeling particularly irritable and cantankerous and just in a vile mood because of Eskom, the bastards who we hate from the bottom of every one of our hearts. And therefore, I would write something a little bit more cantankerous. I do like to use humor, just because that's how I genuinely see life. I think for me, the most important thing, and I think that part of what I went through with my own journey was I feel like I spent a lot of time not being me. And right now I have to be me. It's a deal that I kind of made with myself, that if I'm not writing my own truth, or at least what I believe is my truth, and the reality is that things change. So it's, as you say, I could be really in a shockingly negative, filthy mood, but then I talk to people who feel the same, and then a couple of hours later, after a very good cup of coffee, maybe I'll feel a bit differently, and then I'll write a bit differently. We all that, I think that we've lost nuance, and we've lost our ability to actually see, things change and our feelings change. So yes, I have to write my own truth. Do I feel the weight of responsibility? To some extent, I do. I try not to, because then it becomes too much to think about. And then, like this week or last week, I wrote a particularly negative article. My wife didn't like it at all, because she said I was too negative. And I'm just going to a message that I got from somebody to say, Howard. I mean, when any message starts with Howard.
Just a factual point, Howard, sorry to interrupt you. What was the subject of the article? I'm sure almost.
So I wrote on News 24 why I believe that the government's policy and approach to the vaccine is going to fail miserably in 3 months' time.
Yes, I read it.
And I do believe that. Maybe I could have written it in a different way, but at the same time, I needed to write what I need to write. And the message that I got from somebody was, Howard, I try and like what you write. It's already there. It's a little suspicious. But please don't write such negativity. It's really not helpful or worthwhile at this stage. Hope is very important, and we need hope to get us through. So don't kill it with the stroke of your pen or your keyboard. It's really not the time for your dire predictions. Now, I mean, it's a valid opinion, and I do value it, But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to write what I sometimes feel I need to write. I do get into trouble, but I also changed my mind. I wrote a couple of years ago, and I got real live death threats for writing that I will not wear black on for white farmers. And I felt very strongly about that, because I felt that, you know, the nurses and teachers in Alex that are being murdered every day, why are we only marching about white farmers? But then a couple of years later, when I started to see what was really going on and some of the horrors around it, I wrote another article on the same platform saying, if I had to do it again, I would. And these are my reasons. So I believe in being introspective and authentic. And if we are, then I don't think that, you know, people can disagree with my view. And I really hope that they do, because it is about discussion. But we need to be able to have that discussion. And if there's any responsibility, I think it's that, is to be able to cause us to have these conversations, that we don't think that just because I wear this, I've got to think in that way. I think that's a very dangerous way to be.
So Howard, what I'm hearing from you is you are being you. You have the license on your show and via your pen to be you, and that's what you go and do.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that I've got that opportunity, both on Chai, because and out News 24, on the Jewish Report. It's very rare that I'm told, you know what, Howard, don't, you know, that's too much you. So I really do appreciate that. It really is a privilege.
Yes. Howard, you in your media life, and I use the media life in its broadest, widest term possible, in embracing all of your media, okay? You've obviously had some very interesting people on the show. You must have had some situations where perhaps it's been difficult and you've been on the spot and you've had to think quickly. I know that we all know that you have had some very, very difficult intervening interviews that you've had to do. As a bit of background, Howard, and I'm really giving you a wide berth over here, why don't you share with us and our viewers some of the more interesting experiences that you've had, responses via your written articles or messages on your Chai FM program, or actually even phone-ins via your Chai FM. But the behind the scenes Howard Feldman, not the Howard Feldman, the smooth voice that we all listen to, and the edited articles that we read.
So it's a full range. The interesting thing about interviewing people on radio is you don't know what you're going to get until you get it. So you can chat to somebody beforehand and they could seem like a really great personality, and then they come onto air and then they can barely string a sentence together, or they're so worried about what they're saying that they give you one-word answers. And obviously those are just interviews that are so disappointing. What I do like to do, and it goes back to the fact that I'm not a journalist, is I just like to have conversations with people. And what I found is, because of that, Herman Mashaba, and whether it's Herman Mashaba, Musi Mamani, John Steenhuisen, etc., the only ones who don't really come onto my show, the EFF, for some reason. But generally, they're happy to be on the show because we talk. I'm happy for them to talk. I'm happy to hear what they have to say, and I'm not trying to find the angle just to decimate them. So I think that's the first thing. I think the interesting thing is we've had some people who are very, very anti-Israel. There's one particular person, he's a very active in the Muslim community, and he came onto my show and he wanted to try and figure out how to speak about this Israel thing. And he started off my show, talking to me on the show, with a prayer that asked God as though he was standing in front of Pharaoh, like he was Moses standing in front of Pharaoh to give him the words. And I was quite taken aback by that. And I said to him, I've been called a lot of things in my time, Pharaoh, not so many. And he said, no, that's actually a prayer, which I loved, because it was the sort of humility saying that it's not an easy thing I'm going to be doing now, but let's try and have this conversation. And the amazing thing is we built up an incredible rapport. We still completely disagree on the Israel thing, and we always will. But there's so many things we do agree on. And in terms of human rights and the Uyghur Muslim situation, we can agree on so much, but we know that this is one of those areas that we don't. Richard Poplak from I think it's the Daily Maverick that he writes. He wrote something on Twitter about Donald Trump the day after all of the Capitol riots, and he said, "But he's good for Israel." And I went back, and I wasn't going to. I was going to completely ignore it. And I thought, no, he's got tens or maybe 100,000 followers. I can't allow that to stand. So I went back and said, how obsessed with Israel do you have to be to make that about Israel? And we went into this whole conversation on Twitter, very public argument. And then somehow, late in that day, he managed to get hold of my telephone number, send me a message to say, Howard, I just want you to know that there's a real person here behind it. And we got into a conversation offline. And then I said, you know what, come on to air. Come on to my show and let's talk about these things. And we did. And I think the ability just to hear it, not to be so scared of everybody else's opinion. He's never going to turn me into an anti-Zionist. I am never going to, I'm never going to go to the Israeli army either, but that's got nothing to do with it. I'm never going to become that. But it's not going to hurt me to hear his view. He's not going to convince me. I'm not going to convince him. But it's just interesting to hear how other people think. And I think that's what it is. I mean, obviously, there's the more difficult conversations are the ones closer to home. The subtext to what you're asking me was about the UOS thing. That was a very difficult situation. I tried to bring balance. I believed that I could help. I didn't help. And it caused a tremendous amount of discomfort from within the family. So yes, I regret getting involved in that in the first place, but it always, whatever I do in this space, I can say to you, is with the best of intentions. And I thought I could help. Sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. So I stand by that as long as I'm doing things with the right intention, then I'm prepared to go ahead with it. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it works less.
Right, Howard. Okay, Howard, I appreciate your honesty over there. We have a question from the floor. I want to ask it. I think you have answered most of it, but if you feel that there's still something that you want to just add to this, Howard, please feel free to. And what does it take to host a breakfast radio show?
Well, so a rule of thumb, it's actually such a great question. I haven't answered that. A rule of thumb is generally 1 hour preparation for 1 hour on air. So that means that there's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I have a great producer. We chat every day, a few times a day. Kathy Kaler, who's the CEO of Chai, is phenomenal at that as well, sending me different ideas and articles. If something resonates, I pass that on to the producer. So, but even if you're interviewing somebody, you've got to be pretty prepared. You can't just blunder onto onto an interview. So I would say to you, it's probably less now. And also we play music. We are, in terms of our license, are obligated to play a certain amount of music. So that takes away some of the prep time, even though I do spend a lot of time looking for my music that everybody absolutely hates. My daughter also helps me choose some of the music that they seem to like. But it's I would say it's probably, given all of those things in the middle, the news, the music, all of that, it's probably a half an hour per hour. So it takes me 1.5 hours to 2 hours to prepare every day's show. Wow.
Howard, two questions coming from the floor here. I see they're coming in thick and fast. And just to remind the viewers that Howard has very, very generously offered to donate 3 of his books to viewers who ask questions, comments. But if you're an anonymous attendee, then obviously we don't know who you are, and we can't consider you. So we have the first question from an anonymous attendee. Howard, you often joke you're not sensitive. I've heard that many times on your show, Howard. What tools do you use, and can you recommend that keeps you cool and objective? Have you ever really lost your temper? I'm sure the anonymous attendee means on the show. Let's not. Let's keep it to the show, Howard.
Okay, so first of all, I don't really have a great temper on the show or off the show. I can be a bit vicious. I can, so verbally, but I don't really have that much of a temper. On the show, I'm very, very aware when my buttons are being pressed. When my buttons are being pushed, and I kind of try and create a little bit of an emotional distance between myself and whatever it is that we're talking about. I can tell you, if I have to share an SMS line, there's some really, really vile things that people are sending me throughout the show. It's actually quite unbelievable. I do think, Rob, you and I
sorry, Howard, just a question. Do they actually say, hello, it's Jim Jones, this is what I think of you, blah, blah, blah? Or
some do. Anonymous? Some do. Some are anonymous, and some some use their name.
And Rob, the ones that use their name, are they people that you know and would be in your everyday life, i.e. you'd see them at shul or whatever?
Some, but generally those are the ones that might maybe interact a little bit more politely if it's less anonymous. But I think it's because I grew up in a German or Jekke household listening to Strubbelpeter that somehow we equate cruelty and insult with love. We've definitely, as a Jekke, you definitely get that confused somewhere along the line. So actually I just see it as look, I go into studio to have my own best time, and I want everybody to join me for my best time. But really, that's why I do it. I love it. I love the information that I'm putting across. I love the conversations we have. And if people want to insult me, that's absolutely cool. I did. It was something I learned actually on a more serious note when I wrote Carry On Baggage. It was hard for people to read that because there was this image of me, and then all of a sudden there was this book that didn't quite gel with that, and people were quite aggressive about that in terms of what that book was about. And what I did realize through a conversation with a psychologist, David Abramson, who's a friend of mine, when he said to me, Howard, you have to know that a lot of this reaction says less about you than it does about the person reacting, and I kind of internalized that. So it doesn't mean you've got to be careful with that, because you can also become extremely closed and arrogant, because then everything that anyone says to you is about them and not me. But it was a skill that I learned then, and the truth is I don't take it particularly seriously. It's very rare that I get caught up in something and actually take it seriously.
Right. I suppose in a way, Howard, you want the robust discussion and debate, because Definitely. Where there's heat, there's life, and it means that the show is exciting and generating.
Well, actually, I don't know if you know Howard Stern, the shock jock in America. So they did a survey around him, and they found that people that liked him listened to him an average of like 7 minutes a day, and people that couldn't stand him listened to him about 12 minutes a day. So that tells you. I mean, somebody came up to me the other day and said to me, "My mother died recently. She hated you until the day she died." That was the message. So I said, so why did she listen? He said, that's what we kept telling her. Why listen to him? He aggravates you. So, I don't know. You explain that one.
Well, beyond my pay grade. Howard, 2 questions from the floor, separate people. I'd like to ask them to you together. Perhaps you can answer them together. Who is the one person you'd most like to interview on your show? Number 1, and a completely separate person's asked, I'd love to know the most difficult interview you've ever done. We don't have to give details of the most difficult interview, perhaps just say the most difficult. And who is the one person you'd like to interview on your show?
Okay, so I can definitely say the most difficult interview that I've ever done was the one around the UOS, just because I was so conflicted, and so, you know, trying to do something, do my best, and it wasn't working out. So I would say that was the most difficult I've ever done because it was personal. Who would I like to interview? Wow. You know, like you know, when you think of the big names, people like Donald Trump, it would be awful to interview him because he's not real. You don't know, you know, it would only be great to interview somebody who's prepared to be real. And I think that there's so few politicians that would be. I would like to interview Jacob Zuma. Right. And I just wonder, again, I don't think it would be real. I don't think I would get much. Maybe Julius Malema would be interesting as well if he could be real. But I think that's the criteria, is that these personas and the facades that so many of these politicians put up makes them so dull, really.
Yeah. Interesting, Howard. Interesting, Howard. You know, in the half an hour that we've been talking, the one theme that's come through regularly is be real, be who you are. You want to be you, be real. It's come through a lot in these discussions. The one interesting thing, Howard, I want to remind you, about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, Tisha B'Av, I interviewed the late Mort Perloff, Zecher Livrocha, and I actually phoned you to say, Howard, I've got this live interview at Tisha B'Av night. We could be expecting anything between 500 and 750 people at the base. What's the one tip that you can give me? And I remember clearly and vividly how you said, just be yourself, be real, and just talk as if it's just you and him talking, but just be real. Now, with that, and that's a most fantastic piece of advice, Howard, and I've taken it into many, many aspects of my life. Following on from that, so you are very strong on being real. You now also, I don't know how, maybe it's an interesting bit of knowledge, Howard, became the body language consultant or expert, I don't know what you want to call it, whatever, go-to guy for RT, which is Russian TV. Mm. So I suppose body language, you have to be real. You can't, you know, and we've had you at Peregrine on body language and how to shake hands and how to, you know, it was really a fascinating talk you gave a couple of years back, Howard. But it's all about being real, being who you are, body language, RT. How did that happen? And
so yeah, it was a bit odd. So my kids find it the biggest joke that when I'm on RT, they're right underneath body language expert, because they just can't imagine, I guess, that I'm an expert at anything. But so it came about. I had obviously written a lot on the subject, gone into it, studied quite a lot around this, and then I was approached. I don't know how they got my number, but they got hold of me, and I landed up doing a series on Donald Trump. The first one, I think, was Donald Trump meeting Putin. Then it was Donald Trump meeting Kim Jong-un for the first time, and then the second time. Then we did the G7. It was the problem with RT is you dare not say anything that isn't pro-Russian. So again, that became a bit difficult, and I turned down the interviews where I am expected, where they want me to say something that I'm just not prepared to say. But the amazing thing about that was that by following this body language, I, for example, said on RT that the second talks with Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump was going very, very badly and was going to end in failure. And it was only because of the body language, not because I'm an expert on anything in terms of the nuclear discussions on North Korean politics or American politics even. But I could just see what was going on.
Or the Korean language.
Or the Korean language, exactly. But it's a window that we can't hide it. You know, we think we can. We think we're so good, and that's why I'm so I so strongly just believe in being yourself. Because the minute we're not, and the minute our words and our body language, and we know that the words that we use are such a small part of how we communicate. It's really, really very little. It's body language, it's tone, and it's the words that we use, and the words that we use actually make up the smallest amount. So now if I'm saying one thing but behaving in another way or using a different tone, it actually throws us. We know something's wrong and we don't come across as authentic. And I've watched Donald Trump, for example. I watched his career over the time. As he became more confident and more trained, it became harder to read him, but in a way, he became less authentic as well. Putin, you can never read. Number one, his face is so Botoxed that he doesn't own a facial expression. But even besides that, everything he does is very, very trained and very choreographed. So it's very hard to see. But at the same time, then we have no sense of who he is, and we can't connect with him on any level.
Yeah. Wonderful. Howard, thank you for that. I'd like to end the radio show and the media part now and move on to the second part, Howard, and that is finding positivity. Now, you wrote a book about it, Smile Damn It. I read the book. It was a great book. In fact, we gave a heap load of those books throughout the organization. It really, really was a well-written book. We're in a COVID world. I don't want to really get involved in a COVID discussion. I'm sure you've had, I know you've had tons of it. We've had tons of it, but we're in a tight spot. In discussions with you the other day, Howard, I said to you, Howard, you know, if I look at a lot of people on the reactions to COVID, everyone is saying set modest goals, go and do exercise, do this, do that. It's almost like, you know, the success in a COVID world is binary. You've done this and you've succeeded, or you haven't done that and you haven't succeeded.
Learn to speak French, right? Exactly.
Exactly? You know, my favorite part of COVID was when you wrote an article, I think about 2-3 months in, and you said some of us have watched Netflix for 3 months. Others have concentrated on family relationships. Others got fit. All I could say, Howard, was that I ate for 3 months. That's all I accomplished. So I actually thought of myself as like a bit of a failure.
But that's no small accomplishment, Rob. Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't watched anything on Netflix. I've nothing, Howard. I worked harder. I did prove nothing on my family side. So here I am, you know, Rob, I failed. You know what I mean? Everyone else has achieved in COVID. I've done nothing. But at the end of the day, Howard, the point I made to you is that just by living your day-to-day life, doing whatever you're doing in a new norm, you know, is that not in and of itself success? And is that not positive? Now, I'd like to explore that with you and get your view on that, because it's a little bit different to what the mainstream media is saying what success and positivity is in a COVID world.
So I think you're 100% right. Surviving this is an achievement, and I'm not talking about the mortality rate on COVID. I'm talking about simply getting through this with what is ever left of our mental stability intact. That said, it does help us to find somewhat of a mission. There's no question in my mind that it's been easier for me to get through this, because even during lockdown, I knew that there were people depending on the show and were connecting to the show, and that I needed to be there for them. That every Sunday we would have to record the Synthesis Sunday podcast. And that was a mission. So I was collecting information. I was speaking to Anton Meyberg. Missions are helpful. And I don't think with that, whereas not everybody can be on radio or write articles or do something like that. We can all do something. You know, I was at Exclusive Books 2 weeks ago, and I always talk to them there just to find out what's selling, what's not selling, what the trends are. And the manager at Santon said to me, there's no trend, but the one book that is selling is Man's Search for Meaning. And that says it all, because we need to find a way through this. And yes, of course, this is not the Holocaust. And yes, of course, we're not living in camps, but we're having a hard time, and our kids are having a hard time, and our parents and our parents-in-law, and it's very, very difficult out there. So I think we have to recognize that, and then we have to find something that we can do to feel valued, to feel that we are contributing to this war effort. And I think if we can do that, I do think that that we'll be better off. I mean, I was talking about that article I wrote earlier. Yes, I think South Africa has dropped the ball tremendously in many ways. But on the other hand, there's not a country in the world that is perfect. If we look at what was going on in Israel, what is still going on in Israel with the conflicts and the protests and the different segments of society, there isn't a country in the world that has handled this to perfection. So in a way, I mean, I'm giving myself Musar around this as well, is we should bash ourselves in our own country less or cut ourselves some slack, really. And I think we should need to cut all of ourselves some slack. Just we don't need to hold ourselves to the standard that we used to hold ourselves to. Things have shifted. We're in a war situation. Find how you can contribute. Be kind to yourself, and I think that's how we're going to get through this.
Yeah, that's my point, Howard. So I'm kind to myself by eating copious amounts of dark chocolate on a nightly basis. And that's okay, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't think many people are agreeing with me.
Certainly not the doctor you're going to have on next.
No, most definitely not. Howard, a question from the floor, and it's a personal question. You have answered it to a certain degree, you certainly have, and that is, how do you remain positive? Are you innately positive? I think you are.
I am innately positive.
Perhaps,
I am innately
you can
positive.
give a bit of flesh to that.
Yeah, so I think it's a skill that I developed at a young age, always looking for something in my day that I'm excited about. I do get excited about stuff, even if it's something small, if it's going for a coffee, whatever it would be. I just find a way to appreciate to appreciate life. And so maybe it's innate, and maybe but it reminds me of that story, and I used it in an article a few weeks ago, where there's a guy falling, he stumbles and he's falling down, and the optimist, he's an absolute optimist, he's falling down down the side of a building, a skyscraper, and he gets to about the Empire State Building, and he gets to about the 30th floor, and somebody looks out the window and says, "Hey, how's it going?" And he says, "So far, so good." So we don't want to be those types of optimists, because that's just foolish. But I do think that we need to find something positive every single day. Wake up and think, and even if it's small, enjoy something little. Allow yourself to be that child that is excited about something little. That's what I think it's about.
Yes. Howard, again, in talking to you earlier, you did say that you feel that we can all do something. Maybe you just want to embellish that point that you made. It's all part and parcel of what you've just said.
So I do think that whether it's making sure that every day you reach out to somebody, be that person that empowers you. Reach out to one person, do something for somebody else that you wouldn't have done but for the COVID situation. At Synthesis, we've created a COVID task team. And what that team does is we've got lists of people in the company, we're phoning, we're checking up, we get together every week to find out, and I can tell you that even the people on the task team, just by being on that task team, are helping themselves to feel better. So I think maybe consider yourself as part of a COVID task team. And I think that'll make a difference. Do something.
Yes. Howard, thank you for that. I think I'd like to end the formal questions of on the positivity. And if you don't mind, Howard, there's a heap load of questions coming through on the media side, on the radio show, which I did anticipate. So I'd just like to spend a little bit more time with you going back to that. And for our viewers, we do have time, so please feel very, very free to send your comments in as well as any questions. This is an interesting question, Howard, and it deals with two topics. Number one is, would you like to interview President Ramaphosa on your show? Do you think it'd be interesting if you have? And this is very interesting, how's his body language?
So it's actually, yes, I would love to interview him, and I actually think he would be real. I think that he is quite a real guy. His body language when he talks to us is very, very stylized and it's choreographed. That said, there isn't that much of a conflict between his body language and his words. So he actually does come across. That's why we believe him. That's why when he talks to us, we feel calmed by what he's saying, because there's not that much conflict between what he's saying and how he's behaving. And I even think that he believes it. Actually, I even think that he believes what he's saying, which is great.
Right. Howard, another question, and that's I don't know. I'm sure you want to. Okay, I'm going to answer on your behalf, Howard. I'm actually doing a Howard. I'm answering on your behalf. So the answer to this view is yes. I'm sure Howard wants to, but Howard, you can answer this question yourself. So the question is, have you ever thrown someone off your show or wanted to?
Want to, definitely, but actually only because they're boring, in truth.
Oh.
Only because they're boring. I've got no interest in throwing somebody controversial, rude, obnoxious off my show. Happy with that. Just don't be boring. No one wants to listen to boring.
Right. Wonderful. Okay, Howard, I'd like to end the formal questioning over there. I must just say, Howard, there's a heap load of very positive, which I expected stuff coming through. Just to say your attitude is wonderful, always think about, agree, disagree, thank you. And I think that's the sentiment that's coming through. Others, viewers, want to actually keen to meet with you in person. Is this possible? Howard, you don't have to answer that. One interesting question here, who helps you choose the music that you play? I don't know if that's a positive or a negative question. Howard, you can spin it any which way you want.
No, so what happens is I do sometimes go rogue, but what happens is actually the music is set for me. There's a music person who sets the music for the show. But like, for example, a 7 o'clock show every day, I like to choose something different. My daughter often helps me choose that, but I've got really, really bad taste in music. And it's just one of the things, if you come on to me, if you want to join me on my show, you're going to have to just put up with it. Yeah.
And Howard, the concluding sentiment on a heap load of stuff coming in here. I'm not going to read the whole chat here, but really, authenticity is a rare quality today. You have a heap load of it. Kola kavod to you. And I think that is where I'm going to end it with you, Howard. We will always be able to come back a little bit later. But Howard, from myself, I just want to thank you most sincerely for agreeing to appear on our show, for our friendship, and for just being you and for being real. I think that, I, for one, and I'm sure I talk on behalf of a heap load of people in the Jewish community, we really love either listening to you, reading your weekly stuff. Especially, I particularly like the Jewish Report, Howard. As I said to you, as if you phoned my wife and you've got literature from her about me. So, it is always entertaining. It's almost like blindingly insightful, Howard. So, you keep being who you are and authentic. And once again, Howard, the rabbi will thank you at the end. But from me, a very, very big thank you, Howard. And you and your family should stay safe and healthy with God's blessings.
Oh, man, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Great. Just to conclude on the books over there, the panel has chosen the following 3 people are going to be winning the book gifts that Howard is once again, I say, generously donated, and that's Francis Fish, Andy Burr, and Peter Kaplan. Can I just ask if you 3 can put your emails in on the chat, and we will contact you for the logistics of the delivery. I'll repeat: Francis Fish, Andy Burr, and Peter Kaplan. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Howard.
My pleasure. Thank
Doctor, can you unmute? Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you.
Doctor, you're also a very, very familiar face. I'm sure that you've been put into a position in the community you don't want to be. Probably never in your wildest dreams did you think that this would happen. You've been, as I said at the beginning of the show, at the forefront of communicating to the community of what to do and what not to do about COVID. I don't think we need to go into a lot of detail on that. I think that there's been many different fora where your message has come through. I don't think there's many people in this community who haven't heard from you and heard of you, and certainly heard your sentiment. Your weekly synthesis show with Howard is well attended and gets a lot of mileage. So, Doctor, unless there's a specific COVID message that you'd like to get on, I'd like to use the remaining time that we have more to just get to know you and who is Dr. Anton Meyberg away from COVID, so to speak. But before we do that, is there anything specific on COVID that you feel you just want to say to our community out there before we get into a discussion?
So I think we got to persevere. There's a long road ahead still with COVID. Unfortunately, we heard tonight that it sounds like the AstraZeneca vaccine is going to be returned back to India because it's not going to be effective against the variant that we thought it would be. So we've got a lot of work to do. There's a long road. We're going to have to carry on with the non-pharmaceutical interventions. We're going to have to carry on wearing masks. We're going to have to carry on social distancing while we await a new vaccine. There's a positive side to it. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine does look efficacious against this new variant. So we're holding our breaths and hoping for some good news from that. But just don't give up. It's been a tough year and a bit, and we can manage it. We can do it as a community. We've got the strength that we can take this all forward.
Wonderful, Doctor. Okay, so Doctor, the reason that we asked you to come on the show was really to show our appreciation for the work that you do, and on a lighter note, just to get to know Dr. Anton Meyberg, just from a more personal point of view. So, Doctor, the rabbi did introduce you. I don't have to reintroduce you, but what is a typical day pre-COVID and during COVID in the life of Dr. Anton Meyberg?
So, obviously now it's very different, as you say, pre and post or into COVID. But pre-COVID, a typical day was get up in the morning, go to work, be at work by 6:30, 7 o'clock, have a day at work and hopefully finish by 5 o'clock, rush home to get to the kids, have supper with the kids, put the kids to bed, spend about 30 seconds with my wife, and then most of the time get called back to the hospital for another admission. Stay there for a while, get home, sometimes catch a game of footy somewhere in between, get home, sleep a little bit, get woken up at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock for calls from ICU, from calls from high care, from calls from the ward. A very fragmented, staggered night of sleep, if we call it. And then the same routine, the same cycle continues daily. Now, with COVID, it's been much worse than that. Some nights, no sleep at all. It's been a very traumatic, very stressful experience, not only for me, but more so for my family, having to deal with what I'm going through and then themselves, what they've been going through. So the hours are just ridiculous at the moment. And the amount of stress and the amount of tension we deal with at the hospital, especially in a situation where you aren't allowed family members most of the time to come and visit your patients, where you are the sole person that's dealing with these family members, and sometimes even having to say vidui, being the last person to be with the family before they go on to the upper echelons of the world. It's been a very difficult time. So life, as we know it in the medical fraternity, I mean, you could have taken the Premier League trophy last year, slapped me across the face and said to me, do you ever believe what's going to happen to you? And that's on many fronts a very different thing, because who would have guessed what would happen to our Premier League team, the champions, who are still the champions up until now, but also who would have believed what would happen to us in this world of COVID? We all are exhausted. Everyone's going through a stressful time. Everyone's anxious. And we're just hoping that we can take it forward and actually move forward with our families and get some progress and some way to advance further where we can be normal human beings.
Now, going off on that topic, Doctor, other than Shabbat, Is there any time off? Are you allowed time off? Does your profession allow you and the multitude of health workers any time off? How do you relax? Because, you know, if you keep blunting the saw, how do you sharpen the saw?
You know, that's a great question. And, you know, everyone talks about the Hippocratic Oath, the Hippocratic Oath, and the Hippocratic Oath, that depends how you want to call it, you know, but, you know, we've got a duty. You know, we take it very seriously. When you become a doctor, you do it so that you can help people, so that you can help people understand what's wrong with them, help people get better, and help people go on a journey in life so that they can go somewhere which is a positive vein. Now, it's very difficult to take time off from that, because even your friends always want something from you, and being their friend, you always want to give it back to them. So you've never got time just to be you. Even on a holiday, even you get phoned all the time saying, you know, I've just got one question to ask. And it's very difficult because, you know, at any time, you don't just have one patient in the hospital. You've got multiple patients. And if you have to spend as much time on every single patient in the hospital, well, you just wouldn't cope. So you do sometimes need a time where you just switch off your phone. And to me, that time is Shabbos, where you actually switch off your phone, you get a time to breathe, you don't think about what's going on in the world, and you actually disassociate. You know, you take those little filing cabinets in your brain and you just pack them away, and you say, okay, I'm not dealing with any of this now. I'm actually going to try to be a human being, have a whiskey with some friends, pre-COVID when we were allowed to, have a bit of biltong, watch some footy, and just relax with the family, spend time with the kids, and try to be a human being. But there's a very difficult balance to try and get that right, to try and actually rest a bit, and to try and actually break that mold where you're not there to help people 25 hours a day.
I read an article, a very interesting article. When I was a bit younger, I was I'd like to think a serious long distance road runner. I ran comrades a couple of times. I ran over 30 marathons. And halfway through a marathon, Doctor, I don't know if you've ever run marathons, have you?
I've done half marathons.
Okay. So a half marathon's 21,1. I must emphasize the comma 1. It's the hardest part of the marathon. But halfway through a half marathon is not 10,75 kilometers. Halfway through the half marathon is 15 kilometers. Halfway through a marathon is not 21, it's 42. It's 35. And halfway through comrades certainly isn't 45 kilometers. It's something like 65, 70. The point what I'm trying to say is that halfway, where you think halfway is, it's not really halfway. And I think for a lot of people in this COVID world, we thought we could stick it out to December. I think that was okay. But come 1 January, when we realized that 1 January was no different to 30 December, it became very, very difficult. And you're almost in the 15K over 21, the 35K to 42 of the marathon, the 70 of comrades, where you're just breaking down. I think the level of breakdown is quicker than in the first bit of COVID. That's just my feeling. As a medical practitioner,
and I think you're right. Yeah. You know, I think that,
as a medical practitioner, sure.
I think if you can describe it to your running analogy, it's almost like getting into poly shorts and saying, wow, you know, look what's ahead of me. You know, I've got so much more to go. When you thought that, you know, the end was nigh and you could just get over this, and everyone thought the December holiday was coming and we were able to release ourselves from this. And then we just had a tumultuous January and part of February now, which has calmed down, thank God. But there's been no reprieve. There's been no time for people to actually just let out a sigh and breathe. And everyone is so desperate just to start socializing again and be human beings again, just to get past that halfway mark. And just now, as we thought we were getting to the halfway mark, there's another hurdle and there's another obstacle in our midst.
And doctor, as a medical practitioner who's right at the forefront, you're at the ringside of it all. In fact, you're not at the ringside. You're actually in the ring, hooking and headbutting on a daily basis. When, you know, at least, you know, when you've got 35 kilometers out of 42, you can walk the last 7, so long as you've got the time to do it. Here, you don't even know when the end is going to come. Or do we? With the vaccination, is there an end in sight? Is there a natural end of this virus so that the medical field are saying, look, come the second half of 2022, we'll be out of it and no masks and we'll be okay? Or,
look,
or do we not know?
I think we can't paint doom and gloom. We can't paint doom and gloom. There's definitely a silver lining, and as I always say, there's definitely some unicorns coming somewhere along this road. We don't know when it's going to be exactly, but we've seen that we can fight this virus and we can get over a peak and we can actually become sort of on top of it for a certain amount of time. We definitely need a vaccine. There's no doubt about that. We are desperate for a vaccine. We wish we were in the same position that the Israelis were in, where most of the population are already vaccinated. But we just don't know yet when it's going to be that we're going to be able to relax and sort of take off those gloves. And we're going to be able to say, let's take off our running shoes and let our feet soak in that water. We don't know when that's going to happen. And you know, we can't let it keep us on a downward trend. We know that if we're going to keep on doing the right things and looking after ourselves and protecting ourselves, we can still be on a good trajectory upwards and try and keep things positive.
Right. Doctor, one of the more well-known facts about you is that you're a fanatical Liverpool football supporter. I must just say,
I'm not sure why you would say that. Why would anyone say that at all? I mean, I don't understand that at all.
Well, if you look at my shirt, I think we're in good company over here. So, you know, one of the questions to Howard was, did he ever kick anyone off the show? And the answer is no. Well, I can tell you that we got one of the viewers who said, we're so blessed. Okay, I'm going to read it. A huge score to Howie and Doc for all their hard work, what they're doing for the South African Jewish community. We all couldn't agree more. We're so blessed to have them on our sides. Absolutely. But here it goes pear-shaped, Doc. Even though the Doc is a Scouser. So we've got this email address from this person who will remain anonymous, and that's it. But Doc, you are a Scouser. We know that you love Liverpool Football Club. We're not having the greatest time of it, that's for sure.
That's for
but
sure.
It is a passion of yours.
We kind of like on the COVID trajectory.
To see how you're smiling over here. Talk us through how you got interested in Liverpool Football Club and why it's such a passion.
So, you know, I was growing up in the days of John Barnes and Ian Rush, and you know, I actually got introduced into Liverpool from Shaw. When I was growing up, we used to go to MS Renshaw, Emma Renshaw Shaw. We used to call it MS Renshaw. And it was a very stronghold of Liverpool. There were many people there that supported Liverpool. And by almost like birthright, you came into the Liverpudlian sort of way of thinking and the Liverpudlian sort of support team. And even in those days, we were doing well. But then for a number of years, plus minus 30 or so, we didn't do so well. But yet, a Liverpudlian and a Scouser is a proper supporter. We'll always be there to support our team. We'll always know that we are the people that are the only true supporters in soccer. Doesn't matter what happens. So yes, we may not have won tonight and we may not be winning here and there, but we do know there's a greater good. We still stand up for our managers. We still stand up for Jurgen Klopp, who's the greatest manager of all time as far as I'm concerned. I mean, yes, we'll go back to the Bull Shanklies. We can go back to all of those things. But I mean, you know, in this day and age, we're still blessed to have a team like we do with Liverpool, because we've got Chain, we've got Chias, you know, we've got it, what it takes. And no other team can say that they've got what we've got as Liverpool supporters. So we are very blessed. Agreed,
Doc. And I think that, and I know you've been there, and I think for those of us fortunate to have actually gone to Anfield, when they sing "You'll Never Walk Alone," it literally is a hair-raising experience. So, Doctor, sure. You'll never walk alone. Just again to you and to Howard, I think the sentiment coming through on the chats is fantastic. Not a question. Thank you, Doc, for your words of wisdom at the end of every interview. Thank you so much for the hard work that you do at Saving Lives. Thank you so much. And that's just the overall sentiment to not only to yourself, Doctor, but to Howard as well, for your contributions to the wider community. But to you, Doctor, in particular, I know I speak for the entire Jewish community, and I think I actually speak for the entire wider community. And that is a big thank you to you and to your wife and to your children for allowing you to serve so selfishly the wider community in the way that you do. And Hashem should just bless you and your family to stay safe and healthy, and to just give you the energy and the strength without you keeling over, to carry on doing the godly work that you're doing in Pekuach Nefesh, in saving lives.
Thank you. Can I just say one thing before you finish off? A lot of people don't know this about me, but a year and a half ago, if you would have asked me to come on a podcast or do a webinar, I would have been in the bathroom vomiting, or I would have been not eating for 24 hours before this. I can't give enough hakarata tov to Howard Feldman for bringing me through this and teaching me how to do this, and actually taking me under his wing and showing me what it's all about. Because now you asked me to come on a podcast webinar, sure, no problem. 1 year ago, you asked me China, it was, I can't speak. I don't know what to say. What would I say? What do I know? And as I always say, there's no such thing as a COVID expert. Things change every single day. We're not experts, but thank God for good mentors and good teachers, and we can all impart knowledge upon each other. So I have to give proper hakarata tov to Howard and to say thank you for that.
No, and that's knowledge and noted. But Doctor, in fairness, I don't know what would have been worse, you saying no to Howard or coming on the show in the beginning.
Probably coming on the show in the beginning.
Wonderful. Great. I think that Howard has had a positive impact on many, many people's lives. And like I said, Howard, you should also go from strength to strength.
Thank you.
Pillars of strength, as one anonymous attendee has said over here. Howard and Dr. Anton, thank you so much for appearing on our show. Rabbi, over to you.
A lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Dr. Meyberg. This was really interesting. And as Howard just said, it really was a lot of fun. So looking forward to the next one. Howard, the conversation is certainly most important. I'm just isolating one aspect of what I picked up personally, especially in our current reality. The world wants communication. And in fact, I would go so far to say that we all want deep communication. If this can be done in a positive way, in a humorous way, even better. And you certainly facilitate this. And thank you for that and so much more. Dr. Meyberg, over and above the tremendous amount of information and knowledge that you have shared and do continue to share with the community, if I may, I know of the most amazing stories of many who have had an interaction with you as their doctor, your care, your time, your dedication. It's beyond well known. And it really comes as no surprise to me, as this is evident in who you are as a person. That being said, the past few months, as we spoke about briefly, has been tough for everyone. But I cannot imagine what you must be experiencing and have experienced. And as such, again, to reiterate, thank you for all that you do. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. To both of you, Howard and Doctor, a big thank you for tonight. It really has been great, and a really great start to what I believe is set to be a very special series indeed, Changemakers. Hashem should bless you both, continue to bless you both, and your respective families with good health and much bracha and atzlocha in all areas of your life. Thank you as well, as always, to the whole team behind the scenes for this series and more, in particular to Rob Katz, Ari Weber, my brother Moshe, and Jonamo Tech. Next week, we will be hosting Mark Labner. We look forward to hearing about the great work Africa Tikkun has done and continues to do. Thank you all for joining. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Keep safe and have a good evening.